The letter that Pontius Pilate allegedly wrote to Roman Emperor Tiberius about Jesus has been a topic of great speculation over the centuries. Although there is no conclusive evidence that such a letter exists, many versions have circulated, describing fascinating details about Jesus' appearance and miracles that are not found in the Gospels. These versions suggest that Pilate not only recounted what he witnessed during Jesus' trial and crucifixion, but surprisingly also mentioned his resurrection. But what exactly did this letter say? What could Pilate have written to Emperor Tiberius about the resurrection of the Son of God? And even more intriguingly, what details might he have shared about Jesus' physical appearance, which captivated those who knew and followed him? It is said that the letter begins with a formal salutation to Tiberius Caesar, the Roman emperor. Pilate would have written, "Greetings, Majesty. The recent events in my province have been so extraordinary that I feel compelled to recount everything in detail, for I believe these events may, in the future, influence the fate of our empire." From the outset, Pilate seems aware of the magnitude of what he was about to describe, perhaps sensing that Jesus' life had not only impacted Judea, but would affect the entire known world. Pilate describes how, upon arriving in Jerusalem, he assumed the office of governor of Judea, replacing Valerius. From that moment, his life had been filled with worries and anxieties. Jerusalem, he narrates, was an especially difficult city to govern. The Jewish population, always rebellious and opposed to Roman rule, kept him in constant tension. "Of all the cities conquered by Rome," Pilate wrote, "Jerusalem is the most difficult to control. I live in constant fear of a revolt." The governor, trying to better understand the Jews and their religion, began to hear rumors about a man in Galilee who was causing a great stir. This man, named Jesus of Nazareth, preached a new doctrine and performed miracles in the name of a God unknown to the Romans. Pilate, skeptical at first, thought this might be another agitator, one of the many who threatened the stability of Roman rule in Judea. However, as he learned more about Jesus, his opinion changed. One of the most interesting anecdotes Pilate is said to have recounted was his first visual encounter with Jesus. Pilate had heard that a crowd frequently gathered in the square to listen to this man, and he decided to send his secretary to observe. When describing the moment he first saw Jesus, Pilate mentioned that he was deeply impressed by his presence. "Never in my life," he allegedly wrote, "have I seen a man whose appearance was so serene, yet so imposing." Through his secretary, Pilate listened to what Jesus taught. One day, a Jew asked Jesus whether it was lawful to pay tribute to Caesar, to which Jesus responded with a phrase Pilate would remember: "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." This answer captivated Pilate, who began to see Jesus not as a rebel, but as a man who, in his own way, respected Roman authority and stayed away from political disputes. From that moment on, Pilate decided not to interfere with Jesus or his message. However, Jesus' growing popularity among the people stirred the anger and resentment of the Jewish religious leaders. According to Pilate, the scribes and Pharisees constantly sent complaints about Jesus' teachings, claiming he defied their traditions and threatened their authority. Pilate describes them as serpents, outwardly appearing pious, but full of hatred and resentment inside. Jesus, for his part, was unafraid to openly criticize the hypocrisy of these religious leaders, which only increased their enmity toward him. Finally, the moment came when pressure from the chief priests and the fear of a potential uprising led Pilate to take action. Jesus was arrested and brought before him. In this encounter, Pilate described a strange and deep respect for Jesus, even feeling fear in his presence. When Jesus stood before me, Pilate would have written, I felt an indescribable weight, as if I were standing before someone who transcended the human. Pilate, though convinced of Jesus' innocence, found himself caught between a rock and a hard place. The chief priests demanded his death, while Pilate knew that Jesus had committed no crime worthy of crucifixion. To avoid making a decision, Pilate sent him to Herod, who also dismissed the case, sending Jesus back to Pilate. Despite his attempts to release Jesus, the crowd, incited by the religious leaders, clamored for his crucifixion. In a decision Pilate described as an act of weakness, he finally consented to Jesus' execution to avoid an uprising in Jerusalem. I wash my hands of the blood of this just man, Pilate is said to have declared as he handed Jesus over for crucifixion. But what is most surprising in these versions of the letter is what Pilate allegedly recounted afterward. According to the account, Pilate informs the emperor that after the crucifixion, inexplicable events occurred. The sky darkened, the earth shook, and many people claim to have seen Jesus rise again 3 days after his death. My guards, Pilate writes, came to me terrified, claiming that Jesus' tomb was empty and that a heavenly being had appeared before them. Pilate, though not fully understanding it, seemed convinced that something extraordinary had happened. The governor concludes his letter by expressing his concern about the implications of these events. These occurrences, he says, may change the course of our history. What began as a local rebellion in Jerusalem may become something far greater. If this video has inspired you, leave us a comment about what impacted you the most. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more faith-building content. Thank you for joining us today, and God bless you.